Welcome to Founder Led, where we sit down with some of the sharpest founder operators to learn what's working in their business today. This episode is brought to you by Frontier Content Studio, a revenue-minded content partner helping businesses grow their visibility, authority, and ultimately demand for their products and services from LinkedIn. So if you're ready to join over 40 businesses that are turning thought leadership conversations like this podcast into real demand, comment Frontier below and someone from our team will reach out. Now, let's get to today's episode. Today, we're joined by Christopher O'Donnell, co-founder and CEO of Day AI. Before starting Day, Christopher spent more than a decade at HubSpot, helping build HubSpot's CRM and eventually serve as their chief product officer. Along the way, he learned what it takes to build conviction around a new category before it's obvious, and what creating something new inside a larger company really demands. In this conversation, we talk about what building HubSpot CRM taught him about category creation, where legacy CRMs fall short, and what the future system of record and action looks like in this next generation of software shaped by AI. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Rowan. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, really looking forward to our conversation today. Now, maybe as a jumping off point, you've got such an impressive track record from building HubSpot CRM to then co-founding ProfitWell, exiting that for $200 million bootstrapped, and then CPO at Thrive Global. Talk a bit about what the through line is there, and then maybe what kept you coming back to the CRM opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I just answer the phone when it rings, I guess. I didn't dream of being a product manager when I was a little boy. I wanted to build airplanes and design sailboats and later take guitar solos at, stadium or something like that. So I backed into software. My background is mostly in music, and I found that leading software teams and all the creative personalities and opinions was basically exactly the same as being in a recording studio trying to write an amazing song. So that's where you'll find me, somewhere where I feel like I can bring my friends and build something of value. That's brought me into sales and marketing tech, where I've spent most of my career. And, what better way to be of service, to people is to build workflows and, software automation to help them be of better service to the people in their lives and, to speed up the way that they are feeding their families and give them more hours back in the day. And it's a very different time that we're in now. And I feel like many of the rules don't apply anymore, but that's still why we come in every day, is to just try to do something of service.
Yeah. So take us back to your days at HubSpot, because, HubSpot's iconic technology company, one of the market leaders with CRM and marketing automation. So what was the kind of like skunkwork projects that you built up there with the CRM opportunity? What did selling it internally look like? And what did you learn from that that you're bringing forward today?
Yeah, I had 3 chapters at HubSpot. So the first was coming through an acquisition and doing a replatform, sort of a rapid replatform, very hands-on on keyboard. We didn't have, designers and support specialists and product marketers and everything like that. I got to sort of do it all, design the API contracts with my friends. The second chapter was really around the time we went public, kind of throwing the fish back in the water and starting over. And the founders had a couple of really interesting goals. One was to walk the hall and have a second act, to shamelessly mix metaphors here, but to do something outside of marketing. Back in 2013, 2014, HubSpot, there was no marketing hub. It was just HubSpot. It was entirely a marketing platform. And, every year as we talk to customers, more and more people would say, if you just did this and just did this, you could have a sales solution. I could get rid of my CRM. And so the founders had a very clever idea to let us go hang up a pirate flag, which we literally did, build on whatever stack we wanted, and go after this sales technology category in sort of whatever ways were interesting in the building. So there were a lot of different interesting ideas. There was core CRM, Salesforce automation, system of record category, and also all of these really interesting sales enablement, sales acceleration point solutions that seemed really neat and were being adopted from the bottom up through an organization. And that was the second part of the charter, was to figure out kind of a bottom up motion as we went multi-product, which made it just wildly interesting and hard, frankly, really, really hard. And then along the way, there was the big decision of whether to build on top of other CRMs, one in particular, or to just go all in on building a core system of record CRM product. I think we made the right decision. The founders of HubSpot made the right decision to do core CRM, and then made a really gutsy decision to make it free. So then this whole bottoms up DNA that we had been kind of trying to develop was in the fold at that point. And then a few years in, trying to merge these two entities back into one overall go-to-market beast. I mean, there are many chapters in there. I'm happy to explore any part of it that you like, including moving our entire public company to this new CRM system off of another CRM system that you can guess pretty easily. So yeah, just a lot of trials and tribulations. It was fun. It was pretty hard, but we had a lot of autonomy, a very clear charter, our own team, and then we sort of merged team by team back into the mothership. And yeah, no, there's a lot there to dive into. There's now a Stanford Business School case study on that chapter.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Well, what I want to do is just bring it forward now to present day.
Yeah.
Okay. So, most of our audience, I want to make it practical for them. They are SMBs, right? Anywhere from single founder operators doing less than $1 million up to about $40 million run rate. So talk a bit about how you're reimagining CRM to make it more natural in terms of how someone interacts with it. And ultimately how you're giving the individual superpowers where before they might have felt constrained with the user experience or other tools or integrations. How are you thinking about just like reimagining it to make it feel like magic?
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you are one of these founders, business owners in your earlier stage, you still have a lean team, there's a really good chance that you can be a mammal as the asteroid hits and, extinguishes the dinosaurs. Why is that? Well, if you're a big established company, obviously it's hard to change quickly.
Yeah.
But you also have these functions already built out. And one of the advantages that you have as a newer, lean, earlier stage company is that you're still building these functions out, which means there's enormous green field that you can fill with AI because there's nothing there yet. From your own time, as you start to specialize your time, as founders, we do everything, for the first year or years. And eventually you need somebody who really knows marketing to run marketing. You need somebody who really knows engineering to run engineering, whatever it may be. Now, you don't necessarily need to build the financial model of 5 or 10 years ago and then drag the spreadsheet and raise money and sort of play that same game. In fact, I think it's really not an option anymore. Yeah. So, what do we do? Everybody sort of has this sense that there's this techno hyper elite cabal somewhere running all of these AI agents on Mac minis and everything like that. And to a large extent, that is true. A lot of these Bay Area, Silicon Valley founders and, Claude Code sickos that are out there have a lot happening around the clock, even, today, Q1, Q2 of 2026. It's pretty approachable to have this running for you and for all of your employees. And as you grow, each person that you bring on can realistically do 2 or 3 or 5 times as much work as they could in a previous world, especially if they are coming in with no baggage, no org structure, no layers of management. We're hiring a head of marketing this week. He's joining, and this guy is super brilliant. He may be the only marketer we ever hire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he can manage agents and he can manage contractors and vendors who themselves are basically managing agents. Agents are managing agents now.
Reality.
And this is now practical. As of February of 2026, as we move into the meat of the year and the back half of the year. This is available and approachable, and there are ways to do it that are safe, that are grown up, and that really scale, and ways that you can give a new employee one or more of these virtual team members with clear job description, with clear role and responsibilities that will communicate with that colleague that you add to the team who's in charge of that AI agent in very clear ways. Email, Slack. Probably within a year, we'll be doing voice calls with these AI agents.
Yeah.
So it's a very different mental model.
Okay, so let's make it real now. Oftentimes our founders are wearing multiple hats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're creating content, they are building lead lists, they are doing outreach, personalized emails, and on top of building the product roadmap with their company. So let's take a workflow that exists right now. Let's just say, sales, the sales motion, where there's some level of an SDR, an outbound, and then personalized emails. Of course, the tools are making it better to personalize and make things a bit more efficient. But how do you see maybe a founder that's doing founder-led sales now using this CRM alongside an agent or a team of agents to just augment their workflow or just get a lot more done? What does that look like?
Yeah, and all of the workflows that you mentioned are things that we have agents for ourselves helping us with and doing a lot of that work product. For sales, for founder-led sales in particular, you mentioned a couple of pieces of this. So let's take each one. One of the things you need to do in the early stages as a founder, find product market fit, and coming out of that realization, that moment of product market fit, develop a sales process that you can add bandwidth to. So we start out just kind of doing customer development, doing very open-ended, don't lead the witness kind of interviews, and you end up with a head of sales who is hiring salespeople who go through training and are able to get on the phone and do discovery and pitch and sell this thing in ways that are predictable. It's that kind of journey. So, this is one of those examples where I really always encourage people to raise their expectations of what is possible with the AI. Mm-hmm. If you kind of mess around, weekend warrior with ChatGPT and that kind of thing, maybe help your kids make coloring books, do some neat stuff, you may not be thinking big enough. So for that pipeline development, an AI agent should be able to design this sales process for you and with you and iterate from point A to point B all along the journey. Just do some calls, just see how it goes. Talk to the agent, say, okay, I want to kind of put some bones around this, work with me on that. And the agent will say, listen, let's think about, how about we do this? How about we do these stages? This is how we think about each of these stages. This is the purpose of this pipeline that we'll make together. And then you just go back to doing your calls. I'll prep you for your meetings. I'll help you do all of your follow-up. I'll help you synthesize what you're learning across this. And maybe most importantly, I'll create the opportunities. I'll move the opportunities through this pipeline. You don't have to do any of that administration. Yep. But creatively, let's talk about what we're learning and iterate on this process so that that pipeline isn't just a Trello board. Yep. You know what I mean? That it has real definition and meaning, and that definition and meaning grows from early product market fit discovery to predictable revenue, world-class, scalable pipeline that you can actually give a team. These foundation models are good enough to do that now, especially with the models we got in the first week of February here, things like the 4.6 generation of the Anthropic models.
Yeah.
I mean, they know as much about how to think about a sales pipeline as pretty much any consultant on earth. I mean, this is very humbling, but they know a lot.
Yeah.
So that's one. On the prospecting side, the old world, you buy a list, you personalize the list, or you get one of these AI BDRs or something, and they don't really do a ton. I get these emails all the time. I send some of these. I don't send many of these, but I get these emails constantly, and they are not good. I have been getting cold emails and cold calls for years and years. I'm on all of those lists despite opting out. And, it's just brute force is still the name of the game. In the new world, let's take that same agent that was working with you, building that pipeline, managing that pipeline. That agent is hyper intelligent and will start to see patterns. And that becomes the conversation, not just, hey, I moved this deal because you had a call and you sent a DocuSign. So I moved it into, the next deal stage. It's, what's working for you is when you meet somebody who is a former operator and they're kind of from this kind of background and they've started a company and they're at this inflection point with the company, and you get onto this strain of conversation. That is really an amazing pitch. What do you say we go find 50 more people who fit that profile? And you say, that sounds like an incredible idea. Mm-hmm. And then it's deep research to find those people, evaluate them, and you're actually drafting those emails based on who that person is, and not just some, I see from LinkedIn that they're a dog owner, you know what I mean? Or like mention the pizza shop in their hometown, but really, really synthesize, here are the promises and the pain points that have worked for her and him. And this person looks like them, and I'm going to look deeply at them. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a ton of research on them. And then I'm going to write an absolutely insanely good email to that person. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say to the human here, to, the founder leading this, here's how to think about this campaign. We're going to do 50 of these. I'm going to write these emails. You can review them. We're going to track the whole campaign. Every morning, let's make progress on this. I'll tee you up, or I'll do this automatically, or whatever. And it's all flexible. You can just say, I don't really think of it that way. And the whole thing adapts, right? Yeah. And that's, I think, what's about to hit the world is this level of adaptive orchestration that is much more than, Claude Web or something like that, which, siloed, it's an incredible product. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. And adapting to your feedback as you say, I don't really think that's an opportunity, or I wouldn't qualify that. I don't like that one. Tell me why. Okay, let's update our notion of an ICP. Let me look at your pipeline, clean it up. How about I clean these up? Yeah, that sounds good. It becomes this back and forth that's really exciting. And you can do that for sales, but you can do that for marketing. You can do that for product, and on down the list.
Yeah. So this is such an interesting and relevant point, because we have many, again, founders that are reevaluating their tech stack, right? And there's so much pressure now to hearing OpenClaw here and, some other autonomous agent there. So a lot of them are thinking, how do I just get our business ready to make sure that we seize this opportunity, but also make sure that we don't get leapfrogged by another more nimble competitor? So where do they draw the line? I guess the question is also, now there's this kind of like trust layer that's developing alongside the AI layer, where do you tee up the email for the human to then click send now? Or do we now empower agents to be an SDR where there's they're kind of like have that autonomy and control to have a conversation with a prospect? What does that look like?
It's a terrific question. And this is one of the key questions and challenges, I think, in business software, SaaS product development today, that never existed. 2 years ago, it never existed. We built the first version of Day AI. We built a meeting recorder with an eye toward certain types of synthesis and quality of notes that came out of it. And then we built this self-driving CRM. Mm-hmm. And the third thing that we've built is this agentic layer that is really intuitive. And one of the things that we learned in the self-driving CRM phase of this, I have to admit, we thought, okay, we've been doing this a long time. If we have a CRM that is automatically populated top to bottom, everything moves on its own. It's like the Waymo of CRM. People are going to love this. If that's all you do, people do not love it. They do not love it. I would not love being in a Waymo and having curtains around me.
Yeah.
Right? You need to have some sense of security and trust. You need the little monitor that shows that it knows there's a dog in the road, right? You need to be able to look out the window. And then actually in software, you need to be able, you can't do this in a Waymo. I think you'll get arrested. But, to be able to grab the wheel and say, let me drive for a bit and pick up on kind of how I want to do things.
Yep.
And then let go of the wheel and it adapts to the way that you were driving. So that was an enormously deep layer that needs to be captured and exposed. Why is this data what it is? Where did it come from? You need to be able to see some custom property value or one that your agent sees, and to immediately click a citation and see a moment in a meeting where somebody said a thing. And it's like, okay, that's why this discovery question is answered this way, because they said it.
Yep.
And I can trust it. So the trust curve, and you're right, I think where your train of thought is going is exactly right. The more people trust it, the more they'll let go of the wheel.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And we're already seeing it with the frontier LLM labs, right? We're seeing more context become available and more transparent during the reasoning and the output to be like, okay, it's referenced these project files or it's pulling these web sources or whatever it is. And so that makes a lot of sense to continue to release some of that trust. And then I guess there's also an evolution and maturity that happens where on the other side of it, a prospect would feel comfortable interacting with an agent if they're getting much more responsive, personalized experience. I think ultimately it comes down to the experience, right? Like we've seen it through the arc of technology, whether it's, Netflix giving us a much better kind of homepage than a static, TV channel or whatever it might be. And so how does this play out in a world where every interaction we have is personalized to me, my buying needs, and what this agent can uniquely give me, given my context, the company's context, and just being available 24/7. Would that be a fair way to think about it?
100%. There's no trust me, bro. There's no, the models are amazing. We have the capability to automatically send emails. And I was just putting in a ticket for us to really have the conversation about turning it on for people. We sort of take this Hippocratic oath to first do no harm and to be a little bit careful with, giving people things that if they use them in ways that surprise them or whatever, could go wrong. And we're going to have to turn this on because people are like, look at this email. This email is incredible. Yeah. It's something I'm not trying to tout our thing. I mean, a lot of it has to do with the foundation models and having the right context. We all know that one of these, the super high test models right now, if you had every snippet of background for a relationship, if you had exactly the sentences that mattered, then this happened, then they were concerned about this, then their role changed in the company to this. If you had that all, these foundational models would write an unbelievably good email based on your goals. We all know that. So we do that, we orchestrate that, but a lot of the credit goes to the foundation models along the way. People are like, these emails are unbelievably good. Just send them. Yeah. Just send them. I get it. I get it. So we're starting to see a lot of that, right? In terms of the adaptability.
Yep.
And even designing things, hopefully elegantly, in a way where the agents start out by saying, here was a thing that I was about to do, and I just want your feedback. What do you think?
Yep.
And then the person says, yeah, that looks good. Or, I don't think that's an op, but let's talk about it. Should I think, and they go back and forth. And then the agent develops this sense of confidence while the human is developing a sense of confidence. That has to happen together. We're learning in the design of these skills, right? As these things come online, it's like the first version of a skill maybe is, here's the skill we want this to be, but your job is to actually work with the user and get to a point where this skill is the edited version of this that you just fire and forget. So anyway, it's fascinating stuff, and trying to get the psychology right. People respond so much better to AI work product that is being done in the context of their ownership, in the context of their feeling as though they had editorial feedback, stylistic feedback, and a level of taste that went into the thing that they're looking at. They have a very different kind of emotional response to it.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. I was just speaking to a founder who's reimagining corporate travel, and they're building autonomous agents to help, these big consulting firms and their consultants book corporate travel in a much more natural way. And he talked about this idea where you're making it as, the agent is taking on more and more responsibility in terms of finding the right hotel, certain location, the right flight. At a certain point, the consultant might want to take a look at the plane's seat map because they want, based on some level of how full it is, they might want economy because there's a likelihood they might get upgraded to economy plus, right? And also just like legroom and all these sort of things. And so it was interesting to hear how in these early stages, humans want to be involved in certain points of the booking process. But eventually, once the agent learns their preferences, they release more and more control. And now they have the human click like book now, but the feedback they're getting is no, like just handle it, right? It's not like this is a fun vacation I'm booking. This is like every week I'm flying to this location. I don't want to be thinking about it if it could be booked, better than how I would make that decision. So it sounds like there is this maturity that's happening across all these different industries where people are willing and actually very happy to release that control when these agents are making these great decisions. So that makes a lot of sense.
It's a little bit like training a new colleague, honestly, or a new sort of supervisee, the way that, there are all these frameworks for management and, you start very in the details, doing the job side by side. And over time, you sort of delegate and give more freedom. There are a million of these frameworks, right? And they all sort of say the same thing, which is don't start with a ton of freedom and then come in and micromanage. Micromanage and be clear that you're going to micromanage at the beginning. And then as you see mastery in a particular task or goal, then you start to give that freedom and autonomy and still with trust and verify. And I think all of those techniques or inclinations, patterns still apply here with the AI. And it works really well for the AI and it gets all the clarity that it needs to book a flight, to order a meal, to create an opportunity, whatever it is. And we feel more comfortable with it for the same reasons that we feel more comfortable with an employee who we have trained and sat with doing the work.
Yep. So, as we start to wrap it up here, Christopher, I want to, you being a product leader, I'm curious to know with Day, like what is that time to value? Maybe talk about a couple of customer stories where there's been some moment or some interaction where it's like, oh, wow, this is so much better than what I'm used to. Or how do you even think about tracking time to value or other metrics that that usage is healthy?
Yeah, I mean, the time to value is massive. People should be able to come in knowing that there is some work product, some productivity to be gained in their role through AI, not know exactly what it is, sign up, connect their data, and be shown what that work product is and have a conversation within 24 hours where the agent is saying, here's what I've done for you. Here are other things I'd like to do for you. Talk to me. And then it's just a back and forth. Part of the trick here is humans want to be very involved in the definition of the behavior of these AI agents, but we are not very good at defining that behavior. Yeah. We are not walking around saying, oh, I have a brilliant idea for, an open claw skill prompt or something like that. The AI is actually better than we are at that. Part of it is AI is very good at configuring AI. Who knew? And part of it is this idea of overhang, that the models are capable of much more ambitious things than we think. Yeah. Because our expectations don't update as quickly as these models have been coming out. And they are not getting a little bit better. They are getting, massively better. When it comes to information work and synthetic kind of intellectual communications and sort of information management, they're unbelievably good. So that's really the idea, is that people see and trust their agent within 24 hours and are getting value within 24 hours. I mean, the next morning that they wake up, all the data's in the system. The agent has reviewed it all. Maybe it's taken a ton of notes. Maybe it's filled a bunch of data out, spun up sub-agents, whatever. And, the next morning that you wake up after signing up, you have this kind of revelation. That's our time to value. I mean, it really needs to be less than a day.
That's amazing. That's incredible. That is, highly compelling, especially when you take a look at, other legacy software providers, right? Where there's a lot of connection that needs to take place and setup and configuration that might be a bit cumbersome and painful. So that is there's just such an unlock where you've got this generalized solution where it's conversational, you share as much context as possible, it's not lost or distorted through a form field or whatever it is. And now this agent just starts working for you right away, and it's providing updates whenever you're ready to take a look at them.
And the configuration, to your point, is no longer about deciding what clues you're going to want to try to assemble, largely by asking or requiring humans to enter, to fill out drop downs and forms as they do their work. Every time you do a support ticket, to fill out these 6 drop downs. Every time you do a call, write up your notes and put them in here and then fill this form out. You better get the right drop downs in there. I mean, this is a completely different world where the configuration, you don't have to do any of that. You can always go back and fill anything you want out automatically. And the things that you can fill out are wildly exciting and on a very strategic level. So the config, in short, is ongoing. I mean, the initial config is minutes, but it's at that business strategy level. Right. It's not, let me read the help doc on how to make my deal stages by clicking around. It's like, you don't have to click around. You don't have to worry about that. But what are you doing as a business owner? Like, let's talk about that. So it's on one hand, it's harder, you know what I mean? But it's way more valuable. And you walk away from it like, oh my God, I actually have a plan now, as opposed to just trying to click around and get something that looks like, I'm using a CRM. So it's a lot of fun.
How do you think about how professional services might work alongside the technology and the software that you're building, right? Almost like a forward deploy engineer, because since there is so much customization and someone getting started, they might not know how to frame the business problem, or also what are the opportunities that are available to them. So how do you think about that initial education to get someone thinking much bigger, much more strategically based on what's available to them now?
Absolutely. And I know so many, reseller partners of CRMs and all that kind of stuff. And I think in professional services around this, but really around everything, there's one pattern that's emerging. It's like, what do I do in this new world where I used to write marketing content every month for this company, but now they can spin up I have an agent that just goes to all my meetings, reads all the transcripts, looks at everything I'm riffing on in Slack or elsewhere, and then just writes blog posts, just writes LinkedIn posts. I mean, this stuff, I don't even have time to read them all, but they're incredible. So if you are that marketing agency, what do you do now? And I think the answer across all this professional services stuff, including sort of CRM implementation partners or anything in sales tech, is, again, much more strategic, and they can run these agents for you. You will always need some human to be answerable for the work product of AI. There is no company that is succeeding with a work product where there are pieces of work and it's like, no one's really responsible for that. Like, oh my gosh, you have to have some wringable neck for this massively powerful thing you're unleashing. That can be a service provider. They can come into, your whatever platform it is, finance, customer stuff, whatever it is. They should be able to come in and say, listen, I can deliver 6 employees worth of work product for you and answer for it, improve it when you have feedback on it, and I will charge you less than 1 headcount to do that. I think we're going to see that emerge, and I think it's going to be an amazing business.
That's incredible. Real opportunity for those that are willing to seize that opportunity, because now it sounds like any industry is up for grabs. I think Toby at Shopify, he mentioned this on a podcast, just stuck with me, that in the year of 2026, any industry is up for grab, but someone that's willing to reimagine it with all the agents and the technology that's available to them.
I think that's right. And, to your earlier point, I hope this really gives us what it promises in the optimistic sense, which is the ability to spend more time in fellowship with each other. If we have AI taking notes on a meeting, we can pay more attention.
Yep.
If we have AI reminding us about everything we've promised, we're going to build more trust with our fellow, on the other side of the call. We're going to do more business. We're going to feel better. We're going to get out of work earlier. We're going to miss fewer soccer games and middle school plays.
Yeah.
I think that's really possible. I'm really rooting for that outcome.
Yeah. Sounds like, I love the optimistic frame there. So Christopher, where can people go to learn more? We'll definitely link your LinkedIn and the Day website in our show notes, but do you want to direct them anywhere else to learn more?
No, go to day.ai and it's self-serve. You can sign up, give it a shot, see if we get you that wow moment in the first 24 hours, and email me if you don't. I'm just my complete first name at day.ai. Feel free to come say hi, LinkedIn, email, come to the website, sign up. Anything we can do, we're here.
Love it. All right, Christopher, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks so much for having me.